I don't know, Megan. I felt like after you give birth, like some of the biggest things is I think women feel like the burden is just so lopsided. It feels like you're doing everything and maybe your partner could like do so much more. And I think that's like the first like seed of anger that sparks everything that's different from before birth.
This is Raising Mama, a hilariously honest podcast dedicated to unveiling the hidden realities of motherhood.
Our goal is to arm you with the information and tools you need to be your most confident and empowered self.
This podcast is packed with unfiltered testimonies, diverse perspectives, and expert opinions, along with a good dose of laughter and tears.
Leading you on this journey is my best friend, Megan Stander, who is a CEO, passionate maternal health advocate, and mom of 2 daughters.
Alongside me is my best friend, Chelsea Ledson, who is a mother, wife, and registered nurse with her master's specializing in women's health. Let's try to raise the next generation
by raising up mamas
and maybe raising a little hell.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, mamas.
Welcome back to Raising Mama. On today's episode, we are going to talk about basically, once you have a baby, you might find you're going to be a little angry. And this can definitely have an impact on your relationships. And we just want to discuss, the valid feelings of what you might be feeling after you have a baby, postpartum, and some techniques that can kind of help alleviate some of the relationship issues that we at least encountered ourselves, what worked, what didn't work. So let's get started.
Juicy topic. This is a tough one to talk about, honestly, because a lot of these moments when the postpartum hormones are raging, I think a lot of us have some of our not so proud moments when it comes to managing our emotions and triggers and things like that. So it's tough to talk about, at least after the fact. So I'm glad that we're talking about it today. And you're like, total Gottman expert. And I know you love John Gottman and his research and stuff. Tell everyone all the Gottman stuff that you've done.
If you guys don't know, John Gottman, he's really awesome. He wrote like 1 billion books and did a ton of studies. His most popular book is The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work. But basically, he has been studying relationships for a super long time. I think it's over like 60 years now. And he essentially has done these studies where he puts all kinds of people and all kinds of relationships in these love labs. So he puts like a couple in like a little bungalow getaway for a weekend, and there's all these cameras and stuff, and he just watches like what they do, and then he does a follow-up study with them like every year. And not only does he like watch them, but he takes like their blood tests and their cortisol levels and everything, like I don't know how they're feeling, what medications are on, because he just wanted to study people and see if there was any correlations between what works with people who have happy, healthy relationships and what's not working. If there was some like really easy correlation, causation he could find scientifically. And the results are super interesting because basically he totally did. And even today, you can sign up, you can go into one of his love labs and he can tell you like with very accurate percentage if you're most likely going to divorce, be in the marriage, be unhappy, have a successful relationship. So I was like, I want to know all the hacks to have a great relationship. So I went down. I mean, I read The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, Fight Right, like The Relationship Cure, and Baby Makes 3. I mean, his books are so awesome because it's like, he just tells you, he's like, this is what everybody does who stays together and is happy, and this is what they do that's not. And like, it's hard to like put it all in just a very short bite-sized piece. But
Didn't you guys also go to like that course thing or something?
Yeah. So they have these like little getaway weekends, not what I'm talking about, not the love labs, where you can do a whole weekend retreat and like learn the techniques and do it with other couples. And I personally did it right before I got married because I feel like they have certain retreats kind of specifically for people before they're married. So you talk about like what he thinks are like really good things to talk about before you're married, finances, sex, religion, where you want to live, you name it, childhood trauma. And it also just helped us have like a really great framework for the rest of our marriage, because straight up, like right here, he has this little booklet. I still have it to this day. It's super cheesy, but it's like aftermath of a fight. And like it has step by step directions of what to do after a fight. And we use it all the time. And I think it just gave us this like framework to communicate, and also to know like this is so common. Gottman says that you're going to most likely have the same fight 80% of the time. Fights don't just go away. You're going to talk the same thing you're arguing about, you will continue to argue about most likely for the next like 20 years. So learning how to be a better like discusser is really, really good. But I don't know, Megan, I felt like after you give birth, like some of the biggest things is I think women feel like the burden is just so lopsided. It feels like you're doing everything and maybe your partner could like do so much more. And I think that's like the first like seed of anger that sparks everything that's different from before birth. How was it for you?
I just remember like this incident where I felt completely batshit insane. But what happened was, so like I was very noise sensitive. And I think that it also partially had to do with the fact that I had DEMER, which is dysphoric milk ejection reflex, which basically means that every time my milk dropped, my dopamine levels would drop below what is normal. And it would give me this chest crushing, world is going to end anxiety. I don't even know how to explain it, but it was a physical experience. Like it was like, oh, like what is going on? And when, it was my first child. So I was like, is this what motherhood is like? Like, what is going on? Is this my hormones raging? But it made me irritable, to say the least. Of course, once I found out that I had it, it was a little bit easier to manage because at least I like knew what was happening, in the sense that I knew that it was actually it's a physiological response. So it's not postpartum anxiety, or it's not like a mood disorder. It's like literally like a glitch where your brain just like doesn't, the dopamine levels just drop, and it like it has nothing to do with your emotions, I guess, if that makes sense. So anyways, but then of course I had like the hormones raging too, and I mean, I was like crying all the time, and just really triggered and set off. But what happened was my my husband was like a new dad, stoked to be a new dad, and wanted to like play the Wheels on the Bus song, because he's like, isn't it just such a great song? And I was like, no, please don't play the Wheels on the Bus song. So I was like, no, politely requesting to please not do this. And, to him, it was like, come on, like, let's just play the Wheels on the Bus song. And so I think he like pulled it up on YouTube on the TV because he wanted the baby to listen to it. And I was like, no, please, I hate that song. I fucking hate that song. Like, please do not play that song. And he was still kind of like, "Da, da, 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 da," because he probably didn't understand how much this was about to trigger me. And then, and he put the Wheels on the Bus song on YouTube, and I just completely lost it, like screamed. Like there was a lot of times where I just would get so oversensitized, I guess, and then coupled with the DEMER, where like I definitely screamed like at the top of my lungs, and was like, and my mom was there, my dad was there, and they were just like, what is going on? And there's a lot of like shame surrounding that too, because here I am like an adult that should be able to manage my feelings, yet I'm like screaming like a toddler because of this Wheels on the Bus song. But I look back at it and I have to like give myself some grace surrounding that, because looking back, I'm like, oh my God, you poor thing. The shit you were going through, and he is prodding you, trying to put the song on when you were very clearly like, I feel like he should have been more sensitive to my needs at the time, considering I was like 4 days postpartum, had the hormones raging, had the deemer, and to like maybe not push my buttons and put the but this is like a classic example of marriage, right? Is like when you're in a relationship, like you don't always like, you just don't know. And he's new at the dad thing too. And it's our first postpartum for both of us. So like, it just wasn't like an anticipated situation, but I will probably never live that down.
Yeah, I think what's really tough about postpartum, if there isn't something you haven't resolved before that, like any issue whatsoever, it will just like rear its angry head once you've had a baby like
Yeah.
tenfold. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like if you had, I don't know, an eating disorder or an anger issue or a relationship issue or literally any issue, it's going to really explode, I think, after you have a baby, because you're just so vulnerable. You're lacking sleep, your body's going through this huge adjustment. So it's just one of those times where like randomly you're like, okay, normally I wouldn't scream at wheels on the bus,
Yeah.
but it's like it comes out, but it's like this great reminder of like, okay, so clearly I need to like look into some stuff. But the tough thing is it's not a single person's journey, right? It's not
Mhm.
like you said, your mom's there, your dad's there, your husband's there, it's so that's why I
The
think
baby's there,
the baby, of course, having like, I mean, there's many ways to do it, obviously therapy or whatever, but having the like tools to talk and debrief and like whatever, if it's Gottman, is huge, because you have to start really communicating 20-fold. Otherwise, people are just going to think like you're nuts or something, like, okay, no more wheels on the bus for this person. I think too, it's just like, it would be good too for, I think, partners to realize how vulnerable of a stage it can be,
Yeah.
and
And I
come
think
with it.
I think that's like part of the prep that you need to do with your partner beforehand, because we talk a lot about postpartum prep, and I feel like it's tough when you're pregnant to care about postpartum prep. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. So if you're like, you know what, that does not resonate with me, then that's fine. But at least in my experience, it was hard to, not like hard, but like I just didn't think about it as much. I was much more concerned with birth, what my birth experience was going to be like. But then postpartum happens immediately after birth. And then what, So I think that part of that aspect of preparing for postpartum that involves talking to your partner, which there's so many things to talk about, but I think one of them should definitely be like, yo, I'm going to be crazy hormonal. Like, this might be a version of me you've never seen before. And I just want you to know that, like, I will be trying my very best to like control it. But if I slip up, just know that like it's as if someone gave me like a shot of like a crazy person drug, and that I'm like trapped inside my body, and like I'm just trying to like ride the wave and like get through it. And it's not forever. Like, it's really only like a month of that crazy hormonal stuff. And then of course there can be all kinds of other things that happen. It's not like after a month you're good to go, but but that first month is wild.
Yeah. So I wanted to break down basically like some of what Gottman says are like the 4 most common things that deteriorate a relationship, and the 4 anecdotes that you could do different that help rebuild a relationship. So in my Gottman packet, if you're watching on YouTube, here it is. This is his little sign that I love that I put on my fridge. But basically, he says the 4 horsemen, like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. When you see these things happening, these are the most common things that like break down relationships. So the first one is, criticism, right? So like we all know what it's like to be criticized for doing the dishes wrong or folding the bed wrong, or, you not waking up the right way, who knows, right? And that can happen a lot in postpartum, feeling critiqued for like every little thing. So the antidote for that is to use a gentle startup. So if you can, instead of just saying like, you know, why do all your dishes always still have food on them after you put them in the dishwasher or something like that, or I don't know,
Such a
criticism.
big trigger for many. If you're listening and like, no, I can't put up with that, then I agree with you.
And so you can like use the gentle startup, right? And we all know what that means. Hey, sweetie, I just wanted to show you something that I noticed. I know it's probably just a me thing, but you see these plates, like every time I take them out of the dishwasher, like they're still got tons of food on them. And then I feel like I just got to wash them again or whatever. It's just like you have to literally, he says, like, keep a little pen and paper or probably your cell phone and just like write down what's irking you and don't say it right in the moment. Like, wait a minute. And then have these gentle startups. And people who start conversations with a gentle startup are more likely to end the conversation with a gentle resolution. People who start with a harsh criticism are more likely to end the conversation with like harsh, like, well, I didn't have enough time because I'm feeding the baby. So like, screw it, wash the dishes yourself, like that kind of ending, which isn't really helping anyone. The second one is really obvious. This usually happens after criticism, and that's defensiveness. And that I just touched on, right? Which is like, geez, like I was just putting on the wheels on the bus, or like, I'm just trying to help you, or, it's like, instead of listening, we defend ourselves because especially criticism feels like an attack. So for a lot of us, we just want to be like, whoa, I've been waking up at 2 a.m. I've been breastfeeding. I've been doing whatever. You're not listening to try to have the goal to be resolution. You're just protecting yourself. Super common, but it's unproductive. And the antidote to that is that you have to take responsibility, right? Which so many people do not want to do, right? But usually when you have a gentle startup, you can be like, oh, I see. Yeah, like there are some food on the dishes. Oh, you're right. When I do put the dishes in, I tend to not scrub them really well or whatever. And again, it's not a big thing. Nobody's attacking your whole ego. You're just talking about the dishes. But in marriage, I feel like dishes and trash and duties become so much bigger than the actual thing itself. It becomes like who you are as a person. Like somebody is attacking like your worth, your value. So these things get super heisty and we go right into these horsemen of criticism and defensiveness. And then if we do that long enough, then what he says is like truly like the worst part is contempt. So contempt is when you're just like, people kind of use that word a lot with people who, are like homeless, like, get a job, like you just look down at them, you have like disgust, and it really doesn't even matter what they say or do. You believe that they're less than you.
Right.
And he says like, once you believe your partner is kind of less than you, they're not capable of doing the dishes well, or they're just somehow less, this is like a really deep dark hole to get out of, because all these other things like respect and listening and trying to be on the same team are out the window. He says out of the four horsemen, this is the biggest predictor of people getting divorced or living in unhappy marriages. So the opposite of content is that you really need to describe your own feelings and needs. You don't describe your partner's feelings and needs, you describe yours. And he gives you all these ways to do that. And it's really hard because it's easy to like, again, want to just defend yourself. But that's the opposite of contempt. And then here's the last one, guys. I'm sure you've experienced this, but it's stonewalling, right? And that's when you're too tired. You've already thought about it. You've had the same fight a million times. Maybe you're at that place of contempt. You don't even want to touch it. And they just shut off. They're physically there, but they're not engaging in any way in nonverbals and verbals. And this is really common for men to do just because it's tied to a bunch of things like stoicism or whatever. But this is also like the end of the end. Like once people are just no longer, they're just sitting in a room, but no longer looking at each other, this can be kind of, again, where can you go from there? That's just backed
Right.
against a wall. So for this, and this, he has a whole section for men. It's called psychological soothing. So he says that like you can have your cortisol levels just like, whoosh, and once they're this high, they're above your head. You're not going to be able to do gentle startups, take responsibility. Like if your body is not regulated, you need to learn how to regulate and calm it down, which is super simple, and taking breaths and take a walk
Oh,
and
yeah. This is
all
the
those
part where I
things.
feel like reparenting yourself comes in, the self-soothing, because it all of that, like everything that we learn to self-soothe ourselves really goes back to our childhood, because that's when you first learn how to do it. Like if you think
Mhm.
about toddler tantrums, right? And like if you were as a kid like told that, like, oh, like don't cry, boys don't cry, or if you watched how your parents self-soothed, which, sometimes can turn into like bouts of rage or like whatever. All of
Alcoholism.
Yes, all of
Mhm.
that stuff, like you're learning as you grow up, like especially between the ages of like 3 to like 12. And so then of course you get into adulthood and you have to like whatever you didn't learn as a kid, you now have to learn on your own. And then in postpartum, whether you're, the birthing partner or the non-birthing partner, I think like what Chelsea was saying, it rears its ugly head because you're in such a hormonal state, a high stress state, a fatigue state. It's like you're almost can become like the worst version of yourself, and not having these techniques on lock, that's where the problems can start to begin. And then talking about the other stuff you were talking about, like criticism. I mean, as soon as you started rattling through these, I was like, it's so obvious to me how having a kid can really make these problems come out, because there are so many new responsibilities. Like your whole day is different because there's so much preparation that you have to do for like everything. There's so much responding that you have to do right away. It's not like baby cries and you have time to like figure out what to do. Like you need to respond right away. You're learning how to do that. The structure of your day is different because of when baby needs to nap. Because there's so much work involved in taking care of a baby, then you have to figure out who's going to do all of the other work associated with just having a life and running a household, whether that be cleaning, cooking, organizing, so on and so forth. And so, you know, so you've got all that new stuff, and then you've got all of these emotions, and then but you have to try really hard not to criticize, right? And I think
Mhm.
that, again, I'm speaking for myself here, and it definitely depends on, your marital situation, your partner situation, and how much of this work you've already done and what your personalities are like. But disclaimer aside, dude, like our partners are brought up in society where, and there are, traditional gender roles that they might have experienced in terms of who does the work, who, like before you had a kid, like did your partner clean the bathroom 50% of the time? If, did like how were those household tasks divvied up? And are they going to understand that once baby comes, they're going to need to take more of that load in? And then I feel like if things like that weren't discussed before, you either need to be really good at putting a plan into action, like in the moment, or there could be moments of like criticism. And then when those moments come up, are you prepared? Do you know what a gentle start is when it comes to bringing
Mm.
things up? And have you guys practiced that? Because some of the stuff, like maybe just wasn't an issue before because
Mhm.
like you weren't overloaded. Like you had enough time. So like you didn't really mind doing like 70-30 when it comes to household stuff. But like now all of a sudden you're like, we need to flip it. Like you need to do 70, I need to do 30. And that can be a shock to both partners.
Totally. And I think the thing too is just even if you never really did these things, I think just the knowledge of knowing what they are, that they exist, like being like, huh,
The awareness.
yeah, I'm being defensive. That was contempt. Like even just knowing, oh, okay, like these are common things that happen in relationships and being aware that you're doing them can mean so much because we're human. And even like Gottman, he's not like expecting you to be this like perfect, like, well, honey, I feel like, no, you're going to talk like a normal person, not like you're on like a therapy couch. You're going to say things you don't, mean to say, but just being aware, like, oh, I was overstimulated. Oh, I, clearly was not like, this was me talking from a totally flooded point of view. And, oh, I was stonewalling. Like, just knowing that these are the normal or not normal, but these are really common things that happen. And having some grace for them can be really, 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 really helpful because it might be the first time too that they really pop up and you're like, what is this? And on top of that too, like I said, he says, you're going to have the same fight. You're going to have the exact same fight over the exact same thing for the rest of your life 80% of the time. So just knowing like, oh, that's what this is. It's that same stupid fight. Oh, he's doing the criticism thing. I'm doing the defensive thing. This is going to get us nowhere. And it can get you to be better and better at working through that same problem over and over again in a real way. And the other thing is, like I said, is again, if you do mess up, if you're like, whoa, you reflect and you're like, that was maybe an overreaction to the Wheels on the Bus song, like you don't have to invalidate yourself, but you can then use the workbook, right? Which has like step-by-step instructions, which they're super
Yeah,
easy.
let's go through the workbook. So aftermath of a fight is what it's called.
Yeah, the 5 major steps is that you're going to share how you feel. Okay, then you're going to describe your reality, describe your triggers, take responsibility, make a constructive plan. It's got 12 more pages, but
Okay,
that
so
in a nutshell.
I just screamed about the Wheels of the Bus song. So take me through those steps. What should I have said?
If you're doing Gottman, first of all, do whatever works for you. But since I'm a person who needed to research stuff, this is what Gottman says. He says, first, you need to make sure you're regulated and your partner's regulated. No conversation is going to work if his cortisol is like above the roof. Like you can tell if your heart's pounding, you're clenched. You can see when someone's in a calm state and someone's not. So nothing's going to happen. So a lot of times you're going to have to just say like, okay, we're going to discuss this tomorrow night at dinner or something, and that's the hardest thing. Cause sometimes once you've deregulated, you might not want to talk about it again. But the big thing is you have to talk about it again. Why? Because you're going to be talking about it 80% of the time for the rest of your life. So it's better to not avoid it because it'll just get worse and worse. So first you're feeling calm. Then you just literally share how you felt, which is, the whole therapy. I felt blank when blank. And you don't say like, you made me feel blank. It's just, I felt like I was feeling really overstimulated. And I was feeling like it's so crazy, but the world was going to end. My anxiety was super high. And I just felt like I really needed to destimulate. That's how I was feeling.
Can you say something along the lines also of like, I felt hurt and frustrated that you turned on the song, even though I had requested that you didn't?
Nope. It says specifically, do not say why you felt that way.
Oh, okay.
You're just sharing your inner world, like in my inner world, because that's what people don't see. They don't see that you're going through this deep diving. They don't see that you're getting like flooded. And people have a much easier, again, this is a gentle startup because it's very hard to be like, screw you, you're feeling overwhelmed. Like people will be like, okay, valid, you're feeling over. Like it's very hard for your partner to get into that defensive critique mode when you're being honest, vulnerable, and just sharing your truth. Like, my nipples hurt. I felt like I had no sleep.
My nipples were on fire, for the record.
Exactly, right? And so you're already training them to be listening, not training them. I mean, opening it up, the conversation for listening and understanding.
Okay.
Then you describe your reality and you have to take turns. And this is a hard one. This is what we call fighting. So basically, you summarize your thing and they summarize it from their point of view. And you have to at least validate one part of your partner's reality. So it's almost like you're watching like a game, with binoculars from above. And it's like,
Mm.
all right, let's look at this scene, like playback. And it's like, from this perspective, the knee was out of the line. From this perspective, the knee was in the line, you talk about like your two perspectives, right? So who knows? Your partner's perspective would be like, well, I just thought it was so sweet. We have a kid and it's time for us to listen to kid music. And I thought it was a sweet
Totally.
moment. And this song brought me so much joy when I was a kid and I wanted to share, who knows, right? That's his experience. And then your experience is blah, 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 blah. And then the key here is you have to repeat back each other's experiences, not to agree with them, but to be like, okay, this is what I heard. Your experience was this and your experience was that. And then you have to validate one thing, which is usually not hard, to be like, oh, I could understand. Like, if this was your favorite song, you really wanted to share it. And he could be like, I could understand that, like, if you're going through like this huge anxiety episode, that music could be really triggering. Like, this is the hardest part. If you can get over that part, which is why you have to be de-escalated and like in a calm space, then you're going to just talk about triggers. And so this one is so good. Oh my God, this one's so good. So you share what experiences or memories you've had that might have escalated the interaction. So this one's so good, right? Because he might share a really deep and emotional experience of like, my mom used to sing me Wheels on the Bus and it comforted me. And I don't know, this is not true, but Megan be like, my mom kept me in a closet playing Schools on the Bus and it would drive me crazy, but you share memories, right? Like triggers, like why clearly it's not the Schools on the Bus song. It's something else. So this is where you peel back the onion and you kind of share something about like,
I feel like you're building empathy here. Like you want to be empathic and you want the other person to be empathic. So you're building that by like sharing that inner world. And
the main thing is like you're learning who your partner is, because you're never going to we all know this. You can't just change your partner. But through understanding, both people can feel a lot more motivated to support each other, because at the end of the day, you're a team. And by having each other support each other is the win. Each people trying to just beat each other or, fight, nobody wants that. So you're like, and it just works. I know it sounds so like wavy gravy, but it works. And then you take responsibility, right? How did each of you contribute to possibly this escalating, this being a regrettable incident? Usually by this time, it's easy. You're like, okay, I could have just not played the song at that point. Okay, I could have left the room, something like that.
Yeah.
And then constructive plans. Okay, all right. So how can we avoid this? Because I want to play, and at that point, the conversation's easy. You're just like, this is my word. It, loaded. It means I'm not a thinking person right now. And, maybe I need some space. And that's the 5 steps right there.
Love it. I think that was really useful. I mean, even like I've read these before but even just hearing it now, I feel like we need to have, okay, so like I'm not married anymore, but like how often do you and your husband go through this stuff? Like, do you have like monthly meetings where because I feel like it's great talking about it once, but if you're not putting it into practice all the time, then it's not truly going to become a habit, right?
Yeah. So we do follow all the Gottman stuff. So we have like one, this is what he also says to do as like a routine. You're supposed to kiss your partner for 7 seconds every day, which we do. And then we do actually like every day, pretty much like at dinner time, just like, how was your day? It's called like sharing your inner world. And then we'd have once a month, like a solid meeting. So if there was something big that happened that month, then we'll go through these 5 steps, and that's our time, and it's scheduled. And it's like a 2-hour relationship meeting is what I put on my, calendar or whatever. But if things pop up, like something crazy pops up, then we're like, okay, we're going out to dinner. We're going to do this because something's not feeling right. Something really happened, But yeah, we do keep it the kiss once a day, sharing our inner worlds daily, which is like a 2-minute, this is what happened in my life today. And then I would say a once a month, hey, how are we doing? How's it going? Are we feeling like we're getting better? Feel like we're getting worse? Or is there any regrettable incidences we need to like talk through? And it's really, really nice because it's bringing you and your partner together versus away, which that's a whole nother principle about what Gottman found in his love labs, but we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
I lost Megan.
What?
Did you just zone out on your own podcast?
No, I was thinking about like, fuck, like what do you do if your partner has no interest in doing any of this stuff?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. That's a huge one. There's this like common saying, it says therapy doesn't work on Eastern minds or something like that. And basically it means like if you're from certain cultural backgrounds, these things are just, they're too wavy gravy anyway. And so it's like if it's just something you won't do because some people just won't do it, right? Then you're going to have to find something different. And there's lots of other ways to do things. Like church has a bunch of things that does things. I don't know, sports, who knows? There's probably lots of ways for people to work out their relationship issues. But this for me was one way I really, really liked because I felt like I'm very sciencey and I'm a nurse, and I liked that it was like all based on data. And when, of course, I tried it myself, I was like, oh, like every single time I follow the Gottman principles, it works. So
yeah,
I'm a little Gottman commercial. Try it out.
Yeah.
It's all free too. Everything I just said, go on the Gottman website. It's all free. He has like, read the $10 book. I mean, it's really, 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 really helpful.
I like that because not everyone can afford therapy. I mean, most people can't. It's shit's expensive. So I love that there's like cost-effective tools and even free because he's so widely published and talked about that there's probably like a zillion blogs and a zillion resources online. And we'll definitely post the titles of the books, the links to some of the stuff Chelsea's talking about in the description. We hope that you guys found this interesting and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So, follow us on Instagram at raisingmama_, send us a message, comment in the podcast poll, and we can't wait to talk to you again.
Yay! Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Raising Mama podcast. Your presence means a lot, and we hope you found our discussion insightful.
To become a part of our community, follow us on Instagram at Raising Mama Podcast. Explore resources on the Raising Mama Village located at www.raisingmama.com.
You're never alone on this motherhood journey. We're here to support you every step of the way.